Hey there, pet parents. It's Michael Dr. T. Tokiwa here. And a few weeks ago, I had the honor and privilege of interviewing one of my heroes, Dr. Ernie Ward. And here in this little video segment, he talks about how it all began, how he began his life and from a rural farm, moving on to becoming one of the most famous, well-respected veterinarians in the industry. We also talk about how he feels the industry is changing and the importance of someone in his position to help others continue the education process and just let others rise up through helping them and giving back. And I think it's a wonderful discussion, and I'm really honored to have been part of it, and I hope you enjoy it. So, roll intro. And it's a very special honor for me to have my guest here. Everyone knows him. Most recently, you may have seen him shivering in a dog igloo type home.
It was cold. It got really cold.
Maybe a couple years ago, you may know him as the veterinarian who sat in a really hot car to give you the idea of what it's like to keep your pets in hot cars. And I think that video alone really set the standard. It was at the cusp of social media's ability to bring that message to you, our audience, about the dangers of hot cars. So I'm really, really pleased to have Dr. Ernie Ward on my show. So thanks so much for being on. I really appreciate having you here.
Michael, it's a real pleasure and honor, so thank you.
So Dr. Ward, if you could, how this all began from the infancy of veterinary medicine in your mind to where it led to what you're doing now.
And Michael, that's a great question and an important one, I think, for veterinary healthcare professionals. For me, this is what I knew I would always be. I think some people are born with a clear sense of purpose, and I fall into that category. I grew up in a rural setting. Both of my parents were the only members of their families to actually escape the farm. So all of my family continues to still live, on rural farms, small farms in Southwest Georgia and Southern Alabama. And so, I grew up around animals. I grew up around acreage. I grew up wandering woods and doing a lot of chores, in the evenings. But it was really, and I've written about this over the years, there was a pivotal moment for me when I was about 7 years of age. Again, we're living in a rural area, and one of my dogs, one of my absolute lifetime best dogs named Taco, was allegedly killing a neighbor's chickens. And again, living in a rural farm-based environment, it's very possible that Taco did kill these chickens. But regardless, Taco wound up with 12 gauge full of 12 gauge buckshot in his chest. And so nearly midnight, at least as I recollect it, and my father, when he was alive, would also tell the story like this. We're rushing outside. We hear the shot. Taco limps home and dies in my arms. And so that had a profound impact. And I kind of, have this distinct and clear memory of laying there on the gravel, even the pain in my legs, of that coarse gravel digging in. And I sort of made a commitment to myself right then and there that, I was going to try to care for animals like Taco. Now, obviously, no veterinarian could have saved my dog, but, that was the genesis of it. And then, I went to veterinary school. I was fortunate enough to meet my wife freshman year, really right out of high school. And so we began this journey together. Of course, she went to different graduate school, but we were both at University of Georgia. And then I practiced in a small clinic outside of Asheville for 14 months. And then, I was ready to start my first clinic. And so in early 1993, I began my first clinic, and we wound, doing a couple of clinics over the years. But that's kind of the short version of a very long journey to date.
Wow. That's an amazing story. It's always, most of my guests have always had that, I call it the gene, the veterinary gene. They've always wanted to enter the profession at a very young age, and you're no exception there. That's amazing. I know you dedicated at least 20 years of your life trying to empower both us as veterinarians and pet parents to just increase the betterment of their pet's health. So how did that journey begin for you?
Yeah, that's a really good part of the career. That's where serendipity pops up. So I'm practicing in Calabash, North Carolina. It's a very rural town. At the time, the population was less than 500. So dialing back, to the 90s, and I was always a bit of an innovator, an instigator. I was interested in pushing the boundaries of where I thought medicine should go and client service and all those sort of attributes. So we were starting to do some things that were getting national attention. When I say getting things national attention, basically we were buying a lot of stuff and people were like, what is going on? Where is this place? And why is he placing so many orders for these drugs and these different pieces of equipment? And so when some of the bigger companies started investigating, they said, oh my gosh, this guy's kind of doing things that we haven't seen before. And that was when it all began. They started asking me to write. And this really, again, as I'm always quick to point out, I didn't write a single word or utter a word for advice till I had owned a practice for 7 years. So, we were well on our way to we were very successful and really all the common metrics. And so then people were saying, tell us a little bit about what you're doing down here. And, I just, I'm kind of a writer, so I love writing, and public speaking came to me naturally. So, I think that all of those things sort of fell together to lead me to where I am today, and I've also, Michael, like you, I think, as I've always said, there's two kinds of successful people in this world. There are those that say, I got mine, you get yours. And there are those that say, I got mine, let me help you get yours. And I fall strongly into that second camp. So for me, when I was experiencing, success, early in my career, I said, I want to show you what I'm doing. I didn't have any sort of apprehension about sharing my knowledge. I remember one time, I was about 2 or 3 years into public speaking, and somebody said, aren't you worried that your local competitors will find out your secrets? And I was like, that's the point, because, again, we want to push ourselves. I want to make the profession a little bit better, as my father taught me, and many people have been taught this, leave it better than you found it. And that's sort of how I've tried to live my life.
That's awesome. I love the words you're using, serendipity and helping others, because it all comes back. And that's part of what I talked to you about before the show. I said that you got my attention because of that sort of behavior long before anyone else did. And I honestly, it's tough to mentally think about that by helping others, what do you gain from that other than the satisfaction of actually helping others? But the fact that when you do, and that network you create, it's amazing. We are in an incredibly small world. Our veterinary profession is incredibly small. I used to joke that we're 2 degrees of separation from every vet in the world, and I'm almost saying that we're 1 degree now.
That's
based
right.
on everyone I know. And I think that just doing that little bit, whatever it is, whether it's within your own practice or elsewhere, or just meeting colleagues. I love meeting colleagues at just community events and introducing myself and getting rid of that geographical type of wall and going from there. And I find that just opens doors of opportunity. And I think that's so well said.
Yeah, and Michael, I think too, and I don't know if it's generational, I don't know if it's socioeconomic, I don't know what it is, but I do feel that there's a slight shift today. I think some of the younger veterinarians seem to be very interested in, again, making it about themselves, making financial gains. And I think, I don't know what this means for the future. I do have concerns just as one of those leaders in our profession. I know that I think, again, is a proverb of a rising tide floats all ships. I kind of believe that. So sometimes I get a little nervous when, people are trying to do, share their information for money. And I don't know. I think, Michael, we'll have to struggle with this moving forward. Almost all professions and industries have sort of gone through this transition where there was a generation of people who were trying to more freely give and disseminate information, and then people say, well, wow, I could charge for that, and so I think we're going to have to come to grips. The other thing too that our profession is facing, in my opinion, is as the conferences become more fragmented and as access to continuing education becomes a little more difficult and maybe even more expensive in the future, or at least the way we get it, how will that also impact it? Because let's face it, most of my career, I've presented at some of the bigger conferences, the state conferences, the regional conferences that you and I attend. And so that means that, we were removed a lot from direct, influences of outside money. We were going to speak at a conference and we didn't make a lot of money, but, we felt it was the right thing. I think that's something that we need to be thinking about as a profession moving forward. Like, what does that mean as this changes, and how do we make sure that we're getting authentic, genuine, information and experiences that maybe isn't influenced by money? I don't know. It's a tough topic, but one we need to start.
Absolutely. I think our industry is really going through a lot of changes right now. I think there's a lot of, from my perspective as a practice owner, is the corporation types of influences, and then there's more and more, and we're seeing, it's just like the shift with Facebook changing their algorithms, right? Everything's just going to change on how we get the message out and who we talk to and so forth. But at the end, I'm glad there's people like you that exist, because without you, I mean, a lot of majority of people, for the old guard, so to speak, they're really not interested in continuing yet, but all the young people who have that huge debt load, in order to, just by doing what we're doing right now, I hope it helps someone, because I think it's great.
Yeah. It does. It does. And if nothing else, Michael, what you're doing is making a little bit of positive energy in the world. And we need that, because it's really easy to be overwhelmed by negativity and pessimism. And, I still, believe in abundance. I do believe, that the future is very, very bright. And I think that we're charged with that responsibility. I think that if the future really turns sideways, it's because of decisions that we're making today. So again, I appreciate your efforts.
Absolutely.